Hey, I'm Richard Chancey with 24 to Double, and I hope this day finds you at the beginning of a journey. Because this is what I know, no matter whether your church is in decline, or whether you're flat, or whether you're growing, there's really two things that you have to know to be able to move forward into what God's called you to. And the first one is, you got to know where you're going. In church world, we call that having a clear and compelling vision. And hopefully that's something that you're working on and constantly improving. But the other thing I think we miss a lot of times is knowing right where we are right now. And I want to share an idea with you that may shed some light and give you some clarity about just where you are as a church, because this is what I know. If you don't know where you are, if you don't know where you're starting from, it's very difficult to get where God wants you to go. So I'm going to blow this image up right here and just kind of walk through this real quick and then give you a couple of things to jump into. Okay? Thanks. So we're going to talk about the life cycle of a church and how to create predictable church growth. What you're looking at here is a life cycle of any organization. There are actually 7 stages: early struggle, fun, whitewater, predictable growth, treadmill, the big rut, and the death rattle. Now, we're just going to do a helicopter ride over each one of them so you get a general idea. And I hope what you hear inspires you, encourages you, and helps you know you're not crazy for getting stuck from time to time and feeling like you're all alone. Now, everything I'm about to teach you comes from this book called Predictable Success from a guy named Les McCowan. This book has opened my eyes for how to run the business of ministry and inspire my team to new levels. There are 3 stages before predictable growth, and there are 3 stages after predictable growth. A quick gut check. Which side is your church on right now? There's no judgment in this, but this is where we begin to narrow down the search for our starting point, where we are right now in ministry, and be honest with yourself. Okay, so let's dive into the first phase, early struggle. 2/3 of churches will never make it out of the early struggle phase. That applies to church planners for sure, but it also applies to you if you're trying to turn a church around. You have to go through that early struggle phase as well. If your church is on the right side of this graphic and you want to see the ministry God created you for, you've got an early struggle in your future. Early struggle can often feel like hacking through the brush alone. Momentum hasn't been created yet. This is also where you've got to get a clear and compelling vision for your church. By the way, 24 to Double Online just came out of the early struggle phase less than a year ago. We came out because I set a goal for the number of churches we wanted to be impacting, and when I hit it, I declared we're out. You can do that too. You can pre-decide when your early struggle will be over. Just make sure it's founded in reality and you're not fooling yourself. As you begin to see some momentum, you'll move into fun. Your church starts to see an uptick in attendance and maybe a large Christmas or Easter service, followed by people actually coming back after those events. More people start to take ownership of your church instead of just attending. And other pastors want to have coffee with you and find out what you're doing. And by the way, you'll also get your first taste of Christian criticism in this stage from people inside and outside your church who just don't like the changes that you're making. Over time, you'll begin to notice things are rocking in your church as long as you've got your finger on them. But no one else takes ownership of ministry. You'll soon begin to realize that you're tapped out. You don't have the energy to do more. And that's how you know you're coming up on whitewater. In whitewater, you realize that your church isn't going to stay in the fun stage forever. You realize it's a living organism that's either growing or dying at any given moment. The very success you created in fun brings with it the seeds of whitewater. Your church becomes complex, and the key emphasis shifts once more from reaching people to keeping people happy, from being externally focused to being internally focused. To move out of whitewater and achieve sustained growth requires you to put in place processes, policies, and systems that lead to predictable, healthy church growth. Now, once you've developed a team that has successfully navigated your church through whitewater, and the emphasis there on the development of teams, you're going to hit predictable growth. Here, you can set and consistently achieve your goals and ministry objectives with a consistent, predictable degree of success over a long term. Unlike the fun stage when you're growing but you weren't really sure why, in predictable growth you know why you're successful, and you can use that information to sustain growth. Now I want to pause for a minute before I finish up the other 3 stages and tell you what 24 to Double does and why I'm sharing all this with you. So what is 24 to Double? Well, just like the name implies, our goal is to partner with you to double your church in 24 months. 24 to Double is a whole church discipleship model created by Dr. Owen Weston, who consulted with literally thousands of churches and taught this model to lead pastor Jerry Lawson. Now, 24 to Double Online is taught by Jerry Lawson, who's the lead pastor at Daystar Church in Coleman, Alabama. God is using Daystar to reach more than 2,400 people every week, where they started with less than 60. In fact, Jerry says when they started, they had 60 people who were 60 years old or older. Now, Jerry has led more than 460 pastors through the 24 to Double process. Now, what 24 to Double really is a step-by-step guide for predictable church growth, where we teach you how to build 7 teams for passionate ministry. Now, here's a quick breakdown of the teams. Keep in mind that each team has 5 to 7 leadership roles, and then the volunteers underneath those roles. Now, the leadership roles, some will be staff and some will be volunteers. Now, Team 1 is the outreach team. They're going to handle everything from a bus ministry to planning big events to advertising and marketing for your church. You can finally have a group of people who are focused on one thing: getting new people onto your campus. Not because you asked them to, but because they were created on purpose for the purpose of connecting with people. We help you develop this team so you can focus on what you're going to teach people when the outreach team gets them in front of you. Now, Team 2 is the WOW team. They take the tension out of a first-time visit. They are the front line of first impression you'll make with a visitor and set the tone for their worship experience and future return visit. We help you build this team so you can help new people feel connected to you and your church, even if they don't get to connect with you personally. Team 3 is the Shock and Awe team. The Shock and Awe team focuses more on what you sound like than you do. Their job is to prepare the worship environment so you can communicate with disruptive clarity that penetrates the hearts and influences a deeper relationship with Jesus. Team 4 is worship. One of the primary reasons we sing is to prepare our hearts for the message. Team 4's job is making sure the music is in line with the message and touches the heart of the listener, so they're already in tune with what God's about to do. Team 5 is the follow-up team. Their job is to help people take the next step, whatever that step might be. Whether it's following up with first-time attenders, getting people into the pastor's breakfast where they'll take the gifts and passions test, and helping them move into personal ministry in your church. We help you build this team so you can inspire people to continue to move forward in their faith. It's all about moving forward, right? Progressing in our faith, right? Team number 6 is children's ministry. For young families, children's ministry is the deal maker or the deal breaker. Without effective children's ministry, your church will not grow. This team takes ownership of preparing the next generation of believers. They're a passionate group willing to do whatever it takes to stamp the message of Christ on their little hearts. When this team is engaged, everyone in your church will get excited about inviting their unchurched friends with kids to visit your church. And then the last team is Team 7, small groups. My pastor says that real life change happens in circles, not in rows. From junior high to adults, whether you do Sunday school or in-home small groups, this team is focused on getting people out of rows and into circles. They create the path that helps people take action. Their job is to ensure people won't be confused about how to connect with other people in your church. We help you build this team so you can help your church experience deep emotional connections with each other. And on top of everything else, that makes your church incredibly sticky. So those are the 7 teams. And I know what you're thinking. Well, Richard, there's 7 teams and 5 to 7 roles on each teams. How do I make sure I get the right people in the right role? And how are we going to coordinate all these people? Well, we've designed a gifts and passions test specifically for the leadership roles on this team. And we're going to teach you how to use a pastor's breakfast environment or next steps environment to get people to come in and take that test and then move into areas of ministry that they're passionate about and competent in. That's the basis of passionate volunteer ministry in your church. And you know what the best part of all this is? You are not on a team, because you doing everything won't lead to predictable church growth. You doing more isn't scalable. It isn't sustainable. It won't last, and it won't change the world. But you know what is scalable? Doing less. You can always do less, right? To grow your church, you've got to develop the skill, the muscle of doing less. Now, before you try 24 to Double, let me tell you exactly what it is. First off, it's exclusive. It's the first and only membership community focused on helping your church grow by 59 to 228%. Those are real numbers that we see churches growing by in the 24 to Double model. It's affordable. We're demolishing the barrier between Churches and high price consulting. When Jerry employed Dr. Owen Weston to teach him this methodology, they were paying anywhere from $3,000 to $4,000 a month for long periods of time to have Dr. Weston come in and teach this information. We're giving it to you right here online. You don't come to us to be taught. We come to you to teach you and your team how to do this. Very affordable. It's simple. It's a done-for-you strategy, tools, and training. Every month, you're going to get a module that explains exactly what you need to do, which team you need to work on, and how to engage your team. And then lastly, it's personal. Jerry and I believe this training is a front for partnering with you to rebuild the church. We honestly believe that if you and I don't do something, that the church will not be influential in the next generation. That means that our kids, when they have kids, they will be social outcasts for bringing their kids to church. Now, here's what you're going to get. We're actually going to throw in $737.54 of bonuses just for trying out 24 to Double. Now, 24 to Double is 24 monthly modules. That's more than 53 hours of church growth training with a new module being delivered every month. The modules are anywhere from about an hour and 15 minutes to 2 hours long. And you can watch those by yourself, or you can watch them with your team and let Jerry train your team. You're going to get train your team resources, which means every month, in addition to the video, you're going to get the PowerPoint presentation in the video as well as a handout for your team so that they can follow along. And then in certain modules, like the module on the gift training, you're going to get a lot of training for the gifts test so that people can begin to understand their gift. You get VIP webinar replay training. We're always doing webinars, and we're adding them to the platform around specific things that we feel like are primary questions that you as our members and you as our prospective members have, and we're always trying to answer those questions with webinars. There's a live monthly Q&A. We do a radio type show every month with our members where you can dial in and listen to the questions and ask questions live on air with Jerry and myself. And then you're going to get access to our 24 to Double Facebook members group, because what we really want to promote through this thing is you guys connecting with each other. And now you can get in for just $99 per month. Like I said before, Jerry was paying a lot more than that. We wanted to bring this thing down and make it where any church could afford it. And I know what you're thinking, Richard. Well, what if I don't have $99 per month? Well, this is what I would tell you. Try it out for 14 days. We're going to give you a 14-day free trial. Pull your cheerleaders together, get them in a room, and watch Module 0 of this thing, which is the first module that's an overview and talks about big events and vision planning. And watch a few minutes of that with those cheerleaders and just say, hey, what do you guys think? And if they say, hey, this looks like something we can do, ask them to fund it. And there's the 14-day free trial. Now, a couple other things. Here's our bold guarantee. If after 60 days you don't feel like 24 to Double is worth the investment, you get a 100% refund, no questions asked. In fact, because we do the 14-day free trial, after 60 days, you're only going to have made one $99 payment anyway. So that's no sweat off our back. We'll gladly do that to give you the opportunity to try this out. We're taking 100% of the risk on this. So all you've got to do is click the link right below here and start the free trial. In fact, after 12 days, you're going to get an email from me reminding you to get out. If you just haven't had the time to dive into this, or it's not right for your church, we understand. We want to prompt you to get out, because what we're looking for the pastor who's tried before and it didn't work out, or who is just sick and tired of being sick and tired of trying to grow his church on his own, and he wants to bring the systems and processes around and really take a shot at growing his church and not do it by himself. If that's you, you're the one that we want in this program. Now, here's some extra bonuses just for signing up today. We're not going to give you just the first module. We're going to give you the first 2 modules, which is about 4 hours of training. The first 00 module is a bit of an overview and then some stuff about big events and vision planning. And module 1 is really diving into the vision planning and refreshing your vision, and then maybe even totally revamping your vision. The next thing you're going to get is the 24 to Double online spiritual gifts and passions testing. I've talked a lot about that today, but you're going to get a free copy of that you can begin to use right now to move people into the right places in ministry. You're going to get 24 to Double labs. There's an additional 8 hours of training right off the bat. There's a worship lab that's excellent. There's a lab on the pastor's breakfast, which is the environment that we use to move people out of rows and into volunteer ministry. And then there's another one on how to refresh the look and feel of your church on a budget. And then lastly, you're going to get sermon prep notes. One of the things that we wanted to do with 24 to Double is to create margin for you. And we know that sermon preparation takes a lot of time, and Jerry is excellent at it. So what we've done is we've thrown in 8 sermon series for a total of 34 individual messages that we're giving you just for trying out 24 to double. If you try it for 14 days, download all the messages. If you don't like what you see, you can cancel and you can take this stuff away with you. And that's it. Now, here's the thing. Even if you hate it, even if you go through this and you hate it, which we're sure you're not going to, you're going to start the conversation about growing your church with the key influencers and the cheerleaders in your church. And in my mind, you leveraging our tool to do that is a win for us, whether you decide to go forward or not. So like I said, we're taking all the risks. Go ahead and click the button. Kick the tires for 14 days. Email me if you have any questions, and I'd be glad to help you. Okay, so let's dive back into the predictable growth model so you understand exactly where your church is. Now what I want to talk about is the treadmill. You know, in principle, there's no reason for any church to decline from the position of predictable growth. You don't have to move out of predictable growth. In practice, many churches begin to swing too far toward dependence on process and policies. They focus more on committees than conversions. They focus more on keeping who they've got than reaching out for others. Creativity, risk-taking, and initiative decline in response, and the church becomes increasingly arthritic. Working or volunteering for the church at this stage in its development can feel like being on a treadmill, literally. A lot of energy has been expended, but there's little sense that forward momentum is being achieved. There's an overemphasis on data over action, on form over content. Good people start to leave, many of whom have been with the church for some time. Even the pastor or the founders, if they're still around, may be frustrated and threatening to leave also. The treadmill is a dangerous stage in the church's development. If it's checked in time, creativity, risk-taking, and flexibility can be re-injected, taking the organization back to predictable growth. Left unchecked, however, the organization will decline further into the big rut. At this stage, process and administration have become more important than action and results. Worse, the organization loses its ability to be self-aware and cannot diagnose its own sickness and decline. When a church reaches the big rut, it can stay there for a long time on a very gradual decline. And I know that some of you absolutely feel that in your church. In fact, the church as a whole may actually be in the big rut right now. And then the final stage is the death rattle. Eventually, for all bureaucratic churches, there is a final attempt to resuscitate the organization, whether by bringing in new leadership or by changing the leadership structure from a staff-driven model to an elder-driven model, or vice versa. Either way, the church will not survive in its present form. After a brief death rattle, when fleeting signs of life may be seen, you may actually see energy again. The church dies in its present form. Okay, if you've stuck with me this long, there's at least 2 things going on inside of your head. The first is, you know which of these stages your church is in right now. So hopefully we've brought some clarity to that. And then the second thing going on is, you obviously care about making a radical change in your ministry. Otherwise, you wouldn't have hung around this long. So where are you now? Are you in growth mode? If so, are you making progress or are you stuck? If you're having fun, can you push through the whitewater and develop the predictable growth systems you need? How will you do it? We want to help if we can. And this is what I would ask you. If you're in this stage, if you're stuck in early struggle, or if you're stuck in fun, or if you're stuck in whitewater, I just want to ask you, will you take 14 days to kick the tires of 24 to double and see if we can help you on this journey? Or is your church in death mode? If so, now is the time to act. Right now. It's time to rally the troops. The church won't fix itself. Sticking your head in the sand or beating yourself up for not being where you should be by now won't help. You've done that enough to yourself, so just stop. I'm giving you permission to stop beating yourself up about that. You need a new way to do ministry. So I'm asking you, click the link below and build the ministry you were made for. Even if you don't wind up going the full distance with us, start the journey. Now, here's a couple things I want to leave you with as we finish up this training. A couple things you need to know about this predictable growth model. Number one, you can't skip stages. If you find that your church is in the treadmill of the big rut, you may have to force your church into early struggle, or at the bare minimum, back into whitewater where you begin to rethink your systems and processes. Because if you're in the treadmill and it's all about systems and processes and there's no heart, you've got to reinfuse the heart. You can move back and forward through this process. It's absolutely possible. And you can stay in predictable growth. It's possible to put your church there and keep it there, but it doesn't stay there passively. You have to be active in keeping your church in predictable growth. You alone, pastor, get to decide when your church will move. That is a huge opportunity for you. And I hope you're going to make that decision right now to let us join you for that journey by clicking the link below and starting this 14-day trial. Again, you've gotten emails from me. If I can help you in any way, just reply to any of those emails. They come directly to my inbox. I would love to help. We hope to be on the journey with you. Thanks for joining me.